welcome to the End User Tools Presents Old World Bollworm Trapping, and also we're going to talk a little bit about a new piece of the puzzle, the pre-treatment scouting piece, which probably most of you won't use, so I'll really focus on trapping today. For many of you, this is a much anticipated refresh from last year's trapping app using ArcGIS Field Maps. The pre-treatment scouting is happening in ArcGIS QuickCapture, so that's this little icon here. One note I just want to bring up is that this Old World Bollworm Trapping app using field maps, this one is meant to be used for the Chicago, Illinois area only. And so if you are scouting for or trapping for or just kind of looking for Old World Bollworm elsewhere in the country, you would use the exotic moth map. So if you need help finding that, please feel free to ping me later and I will definitely point you in the right direction. We have here with us a couple of my colleagues, and welcome to the National Operations Manager. That's Alec Ormsby. Thank you for being here, Alec. So please feel free to pop in and say anything. If I miss anything, or Alec, would you like to say anything right off the bat? I'll give you a moment.
No, thanks, Jenny. I appreciate this, and take it away.
Okay, thanks for being here. I always like seeing familiar faces, and I know many of you as well. So glad to see you all here this morning. As I said, this is kind of always much anticipated when there's an app from the year before and it gets a refresh for the new season. I know some of you have already started trapping, and so maybe this will just give you that little boost of confidence you're doing it right. There's three things that you will need on hand. Number one is a mobile device in order to collect that data that you feel pretty comfortable using. It could be an iPad, it could be an iPhone. Some have even started using Androids here or there. So I will demonstrate on my iPad and show you what that looks like. It's a bigger screen, so I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. But I also have my government issued iPhone, and I will try really hard to show you what that looks like too. Sometimes I forget, so please ping me if I forget. So number one, a device. Number two, you want to feel pretty comfortable with this ArcGIS Field Maps. For those of you maybe that are participating in this pre-treatment scouting, QuickCapture is something you want to be familiar with as well. And then thirdly, you want to be familiar with survey protocol, and your contact for that is Alec Ormsby here on the call, your National Operations Manager. I'm not privy to and haven't studied up on that survey protocol. Today, I'm just going to take you through how to use this mobile app and enter data as the form was designed to take it. So we'll go through that piece, but those three things are your responsibility to check out. I'm going to put a couple of links in the chat, and for those of you who attend my trainings, it's always kind of the same, but I want to make sure you know these two things, and I'll show you what they are. The first link is this mobile data collection tools page. This is a public-facing website for APHIS, and we have a little page here with all of our training tools. And this is a great place for you to go first for everything Old World Bollworm and other. So you might have found on the top half is mostly document heavy, and the bottom half is a video gallery. In the top half, if you feel like you need some ArcGIS Field Maps help, there is a user guide here under the general training documents. We don't yet have a quick capture guide, but I can show you where you might find some information there if you need it. Under the PEST program specific training documents, you'll find two documents specific to Old World Bollworm. Here they are on the list. There is a quick reference, just like a quick little cheat sheet for the field, and there is a more detailed user manual for entering data this way. So we've got, like, if you like to see things written out with little screenshots and every step of the way, or maybe today I go a little too fast, you have a little user manual here to reference. I'm going to go back one page. That bottom half with the video gallery also has lots of resources. We've started to have to sign in using MobileLink, and there's a quick little, this is what it looks like video under the foundations category, or you could certainly search for it as well. We have 10 self-paced videos on ArcGIS Field Maps, if you haven't done this series, I'd really encourage you to at least walk yourself through them. You can do them a little at a time, but if you've used field maps and you feel pretty good about it, I'd still say have a look at this and see if there's a few that you might want to review. The sign-in might help, the disconnected workflow, how to download a map area, watching that done, and then maybe this daily data sync video, just as a suggestion. So keep an eye on that. You might have noticed that today is being recorded, our training today, and that will also show up here in this video gallery. You could search OWB, or it comes under the category of pest programs, and it'll show up right at the top left. That's kind of where they just kind of automatically pop in. And give me about a week, maybe less. I'll try to do my best to get this up as quickly as possible. A lot of people use this video if they want to just say like, what did she say again? Have a look at it one more time. Or maybe you do some trapping for a couple weeks and you want to just check yourself and make sure that that's going as you're supposed to be doing that. And so the video's here, or for colleagues that maybe couldn't make it here today. So we always try to make that happen. Give me maybe a week to do that and I'll do my best. The second link I gave you is a training quiz, and I try my best to make this as low pressure as possible. You don't have to take the quiz, but it is meant to kind of help you get things stuck in your head. So, so it's just an extra step to kind of give you that chance while things are fresh to remind yourself of some of the points that I really want to make sure are sinking in. And it does a couple things. So this third question asks you for an email address, and it's meant to be used by both internal and external users. So you need to type in your email address with care. And then when you complete the quiz, you'll get an automated email that just says, congratulations, you completed this OWB training. So sometimes that's helpful to pass on to your supervisor. I kind of like to keep those things in a folder so that I know what I've done for the year. But it gives you that little email kind of kudos. And also it tells me kind of how people are doing. And you don't get a grade, you don't need to pass, you don't need to fail, you don't have to worry about any of that. And I give it to you early because I want the pressure to be low. So you have this quiz and you can open it now if you have the ability or want to, and you can answer these questions along the way, but hopefully it helps kind of put that knowledge into your head along the way.
And Jenny, this is
Yes,
Alex. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to underscore something you said
please.
right at the outset and want to make sure everyone who's on the call understands. This particular app is used only for the PPQ response in Northern Illinois around the Chicago O'Hare Airport area. So if you're doing a survey like bundled cap survey or pest detection survey for OWB in other states or areas, this would not be the app you would be using. You'd be using the adult exotic moth survey map. Just wanted everyone to be sure about that.
Thank you, Alec, and much better said. Thank you for doing that for me. Okay, great. And please, anyone, feel free to interrupt. We're kind of a small group and I really don't mind at all. So I appreciate it. Okay, so back to what are we going to talk about? Let's see if I can get the right view. Okay, so what we'll talk about, which I always kind of try to do, I'm going to show you what that sign-in looks like with ArcGIS Field Maps. We'll start by talking about trapping, and that is predominantly what this training will be about. And I will hit towards the end on where and how that pre-treatment scouting in QuickCapture happens. We're going to talk about that disconnected workflow. It's very important, and so I'll overview it and just make sure we understand kind of the important steps, but as you know, you have video training and other things there for you. We're going to look at the map layers included, and I'll show you a demonstration. Like I said, I'm going to use the iPad. It's a bigger screen, but I will show you what that looks like on the iPhone, I hope, if I remember. And then finally, hopefully we've already covered them and it becomes a reminder, but there's a few points that I always like to make sure that we're keeping on the forefront as like little tips and tricks. So we'll cover reminders. So just diving into field maps itself. It is designed for offline use. There's a user guide for you and that self-paced video series. Again, if you haven't taken advantage of just at least skimming or reviewing those, even if you're familiar with field maps from last year, it just gives you a little bit stronger view and can make sure that you feel perfectly comfortable using it. When you first open field maps, you get something that looks like this, and can be kind of a source of confusion, but once you've done it a few times, becomes automatic. We have an option to sign in using ArcGIS Online, Enterprise, or skipping entirely. And as federal users, all of our data is hosted in an enterprise instance. So we'll always select sign in with ArcGIS Enterprise in the red box. And then when you select that button, you'll get these options: specify a new URL or scan code. And we always tap specify a new URL, and then we'll manually type that in using a keyboard. So some of you with the eagle eyes see that there's already a URL showing up here. I'll give it a little arrow. And that is ArcGIS Field Maps trying to help you out. So once you've typed in that URL, the next time you tap sign in with Enterprise, this pops up with the option with the URL saved there. And then you just tap the URL. One thing that I really want to point out about this is that there are two URLs that you might choose to use here. And it's really important to keep these straight. And just as a hint, this is a quiz question. So here's a freebie for you. So that first URL that you just saw is this top one, which is our official, or we call it the production instance. And this bottom one here is a staging instance. And what my team does is we make an official map for the PEST program for OWB. And then we also make a copy of that map so that you can use it for training or practice or just playing around and not feeling nervous about anything. And in fact, that's what I'll use today, this training version, so that I can put in some data that's not real. And you have to be very careful when you sign in to be sure that you've signed in using that correct URL. So I'm going to give you a couple of little boxes here just to kind of point out the difference. So this is maps.mrp. This is that production portal. This is where official data should be entered. And the map looks a little cooler. The imagery is a little better on the base map. And then this bottom one is maps-stg.mrp. That STG should tip you off that it's like staging. So it's like the play version. So consider that as where you would put data that is not official. And the big caveat here is just to be sure that you are in the right URL, that training data or fake data or play data does not ever get entered in our production portal, and vice versa. We don't want official data being entered in the training map. Now the training map has some hints to it. Number one, it's right there in the title. We have in all caps training at the beginning of the title, and the base map behind it is just kind of a boring light gray. I'm going to point that out later, but just know that when you sign in, this URL that you use to sign in is what takes you into the ability to open those maps. So just be a little careful there. The overview of that workflow being disconnected, I just want to talk through why disconnected mode is important. Many of us use iPhones that have cellular data plans, and it could seem really easy to just stay connected and go ahead and use a live map. What that does, there's a couple of things that could make that worse. Well, when you're using a live map, you're pinging that server with every movement. And so it's it reminds me of my dad again. Like, if everybody does it, if everyone in our nation is collecting data on different pest programs while live, they're pinging that server and overloading it unnecessary. So it kind of creates an overload on our server that's not necessary if you stay connected. Secondly, sometimes this server can have a problem. And if you have downloaded a map area, you can continue about your business collecting data, really pretty oblivious to any issues going on during the day. What would slow you down is syncing that data back at the end of the day if that server hasn't resolved, but your workflow can continue. So you can kind of like disregard problems that might come up. Also, one of our biggest issues is with data collection electronically is an interrupted data sync. And if you are collecting data while live, you're essentially, your device is performing a continuous sync. And so you could find yourself in a situation, even in an urban area, where your connection to that Wi-Fi or that data connection is interrupted. And so that can mess up your data being uploaded into that online map. So there's a few good reasons, but really it comes down to planning. So I think of it like a road trip, like even going out into the field to collect data, I'm thinking about snacks and the route I'm going to take to get there, and all of that planning. And part of that planning in the office is in this red box. And once that's complete, in the red box, well connected to Wi-Fi, if you connect to Wi-Fi and download an offline area, that's then held in your device. Many people use it the whole season. So this one step can really set you up for success collecting data for OWB for the entire time you do that this year. Then you can disconnect from Wi-Fi. I always add this little bullet point to perform some tests in the parking lot. Make sure that that map area is working as you would expect. Go ahead and open it up, open up the form as if you were going to collect a point and move around on the map, make sure it's what you need. And then you just can disconnect and head on out there and collect data for the day. The other important point in this disconnected workflow, besides that red box, is this sync step. So at the end of the day, when you come back to the office or to a hotel or where you can have a reliable Wi-Fi, you want to perform a sync. And we'll look at that button a little bit, and you have other videos to watch. So I won't go into a lot of detail there. One thing that I'll point out about OWB this year is, and last year was the same, the trapping activities have some automated scripting connected to them that run every night. And so it would be a good idea for you to perform this sync in the morning before you leave, because the sync is a two-way sync. So it's both pulling in updates from that online map and pushing up your data that you've collected to that online hosted map service. So I would recommend doing this in the morning, pulling in those updates, and also in the evening, pushing out yours and getting updates. And then this reminder is probably more for me, this charge your device. I'm guilty of forgetting to plug my device in to be charged. Actually, this morning I was in a little bit of a panic because I was at 20%. And any of you with these devices, sometimes that last 20% is a shorter amount of time than you think. So I just got that bullet point there. But this disconnected workflow really rests heavily on just prepping that map area in the first place, and then paying special attention to that data sync. And that's for field maps. So the data layers in OWB look pretty simple. There's a markup layer, which is just a default layer inherent to field maps itself. Every map has a markup layer. I'd recommend, if you're going to use that, checking in with your supervisor. Number one, it's not an official data layer, so you should never put any official OWB information in a markup layer. And number two, it really is just held in your device, so it's not shareable or easily shareable. So it's kind of like a secret little notebook. So be careful with that default markup layer. The official map layer, though, for OWB trapping is this OWB Trapping 2023. And then this reference layers is actually a group of reference layers. So you enable the group, and then you can enable different reference layers within it. Our QuickCapture layer also has a view here in the reference layers, so that's a good way to check that. Let me open those up so you can see what those look like. Let's give you that view. The reference layers include the trap sites from last year, 2022. We have core trapping areas. Again, as Alec emphasized, this is for Illinois, Northern Illinois. We've got protection areas from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, both in areas and associated parcels, and in risk zones for RPBB. So you have these layers to help you kind of facilitate that trapping activity. And then, as I said, this is just a view of that pre-treatment scouting layer as it's being contributed and updated to from QuickCapture. Okay, so let's have a look at trapping a little bit, the workflow as it's sort of meant to be entered into this application. The first visit would be kind of placing that trap. And what it does is it places that trap on the map. It places the location on the map that you see. And then there's a data form that has you enter information on that site. So that first visit is placing both the trap on the map and giving the information behind that trap site. It also counts as your first install. There's an install date on that form, which infers that you have placed an actual physical trap on that first visit. And then all other future visits are associated with that trap site in a activity table. So we've got like this little line going from that first trap site placement down into an activity table. And you want to be sure that every time you visit that trap, you are recording an activity on that trap site. So I'll show you how that looks in the form, but just kind of think of it that way as far as how the data is collected. Something that kind of can get confusing is if you have to relocate a trap for some reason, and it comes up enough that I pretty much always go over this. If you think about it, it makes sense right away, but it can get really confusing out in the field. So we always want to take a moment to think about it. For any reason, a trap could need to be relocated, maybe suddenly that location just doesn't work for any reason. On the original site, you'll want to enter that activity that you've removed the trap. So that activity table will need an entry of remove. Once you've removed that trap in the data form, you can pick that trap up and it is removed, and you can walk this line to the new location and you can start again by placing the trap. What gets people sometimes is forgetting to perform this data entry, this removing the trap data entry. And sometimes people think that the symbol on the map should disappear. This is not so. In fact, it's really important to the data entry that the whole history of that trap site remains and that that trap remains. This is one of those overnight updates too. So what happens overnight with the automated script happening from our data group is if you enter an activity of removing the trap, that data activity, then overnight that script locates that that's happened and it updates the symbology. So on the map then, the symbol for that trap site changes to indicate it is now inactive. So the trap site stays, it just changes overnight to inactive. So again, a great reason to perform that sync and make sure that your symbology is all getting updated. So what should happen on that original spot? You should still see a symbol. The next day it should look like it's inactive, and the last activity should say it was removed. And then you can just go move it and start from the start, placing that trap. So let me show you what that looks like. And you can see here I am plugged in. Good, we're getting to 59%. A lot of my training is don't do as I do better than me. I'm sure you already are pretty good at this. So I'm going to go ahead and open my iPad and I'm going to open Field Maps. And I know that I've signed into that staging instance, that STG URL, and Field Maps has just pulled me all the way in. It didn't make me sign in again, and it actually pulled me all the way into the last map that I was in, which happens to be our map here. I'm going to go back twice to the main maps menu and just point out a couple things. It's still kind of loading. I don't know if you can see, it's kind of spinning along. Here we go. But we do have all these titles start with training, all caps, and many of the thumbnails also have training in them. So we try to indicate that right off the bat. But if I wasn't sure which URL I'd signed into, I can go to my profile menu, scroll up a little bit, and I would just sign out and sign back in, make sure that I'm in the right one. But today, this is where we want to be. We're not entering real data. And I can see here that I've prepared I've got an offline area ready to go. It's telling me that right there in the map card. So I'm going to open that. And actually what I've done is I've downloaded 2 map areas because I'm in Colorado and I want to show you how the GPS locates me. This is mine here. I'm in Windsor. But I also downloaded one for the Chicago area so that you could see what those reference layers look like and how they load. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open the one locally to me. And you can see I've been playing around. There's some data here and there's some difference in some of the symbology. I'm going to start by showing you along the top, there is a sync button, the arrow in and out. As you see, it's a two-way sync. If you don't see this sync button, that means you are not in an offline map. And so you want to make sure that you are seeing this sync button. And another thing to point out is if I open that up, I don't have any pending edits. So everything has already been synchronized. And this auto sync is off. And that's another way to make sure that you don't have an interrupted synchronization. If that is on, your device is just going to try to sync every 15 minutes or so. So we want to make sure that's off. Okay, the next one here is a layers menu. It looks like a stack of papers. And if I open that, you're going to see the same thing I showed you on the PowerPoint screenshot. We have our active trap sites layer that's where we want to enter data for this year. And our reference layers is a group. So if I tap that, I open them. And then this group of layers is open and I can go ahead and enable by layer which one I want to see. So none of these are going to show up in, well, actually the scouting one will show up in my area. There's some scouting areas that are showing up here. And depending on what layers are now enabled, or that blue toggle, now what I can do, and a cool trick is over here in this 3-dot menu, or sometimes they call it the overflow menu, I can look at a legend and see what those things mean. So based on what was enabled, which was our trap sites layer and our scouting layer for treatments, we can see what these symbols mean. So we can see I've got a current trap in view, I have one that's due for service, and I have one inactive. So this due for service is also an overnight script that happens, and it's looking for, based on the last activity on that trap site, that activity plus 14 days, it's going to kind of give you a little hint that it's been 14 days since the last activity. So if I go ahead and open that trap, I'll see that those activities are matching with that symbology. All right, so if I want to add data or I want to place that trap, let's go ahead and walk through that. In order to add data, we're going to hit the plus sign at the bottom, add data, add button, bottom right, and that opens up the trap site menu or a trap site form. And this trap site form has some required fields. That's the star next to the field. It's got some hints, you know, first and last names. It has a default here that we can see and view the agency. And if we want to change any of that, we just tap on that field itself to change it. Now, I want to point out I'm in my basement. I'm getting red warnings everywhere for the GPS, and there we pop blue. It's working on trying to find me and locate me. I'm going to go ahead and move the point out a little so that it will place it where you can see it instead of right on top of me. And I'm just going to add the point out there. So now we're adding this trap out here because I want to make sure you see the difference in symbol. So this little blue dot is actually my location. The GPS is finding me. And then this is the symbol for the new trap. And all new traps come in as being a current status. So there's that blue box for us. And then we're going to go ahead and fill out the field. So if I need to change the agency, I can say I'm a state cooperator. I'm going to follow the directions, and I would follow survey protocol. I'm following Jenny protocol right now, which is incorrect. So I just do this for my testing purposes. I'm just going to go ahead and fill it out. I can hit done and close that up. In the trap site type, I've got some options here. I think I'm far outlying from Chicago, so I'm going to go ahead and choose that. The date field opens up a calendar, and it's restricted to this year, so you can't go outside of this year. But something that happens to me sometimes if I'm entering a date is I might accidentally tap a date on the calendar. You can tap today to return to today's date and timestamp. And then you can also close the calendar view. I recommend this. Just once you've got your date in, close that up. You have an option here to enter whether it is in the rusty patch bumblebee zone. It defaults to not applicable, and if you find that you are or not, you can go ahead and indicate whether red or yellow. This would mean that you need to have that reference layer also there to check. So I'll show you that in the Chicago area as well, but you would want to make sure that that layer is enabled so that you can answer this appropriately, right? And then trap site comments, I'm just going to say test here to be sure that everyone knows that. You can see that the schedule status did come in as current as the default, and we have our default trap type and lure. We have county and state, and that is generated by GIS overnight. That's updated later. So once you've entered this, you can come back in and see that updated. And we also have a little group of questions here for quality control. These are also just updated by GIS and editors later, so you don't need to worry about those too much. Then go ahead and check over your form. Did we complete everything? Yep, looks good. And then we're going to tap submit. What this has done then is it has submitted this entry or this edit to your offline or my offline map on my iPad. So it is not known to anyone but me at this point, and you because you're looking over my shoulder. But the sync button has changed. Now we have a little dot on the outgoing arrow. And if we have a look at that menu, we can see there is a pending edit. So you'll have a much longer list when you're spending the day in the field, but this is where they're showing up. Okay, so we placed this trap and we can see that it gave us the little trap name. Test 06 is what we named that trap site. And if we wanted to, then that trap is good, but we can see that we have one that needs service, this one that's due. So let's go ahead and visit this trap. To do that, we'd select that on the actual map. And you might have to kind of like zoom in and out and make sure, or when the form opens up to the side, just check the trap ID to be sure you have selected the correct one. And then we've got the data form here, which we could edit if we needed to. We would tap the pencil or scroll up and look for edit on this form. I think it looks fine. Everything's good. I want to perform a trap activity. So I can either find that by tapping this link icon at the bottom, or if I scroll up in this form, I'll find that option for OWB trap activities. This is that linked table, which is going to give us the ability to add an activity to this trap site. So I'm going to go ahead and tap that. And we can see there was an activity previously performed, and that was a monitor activity back on March 20th. It's definitely due according to our protocol. And so I'm going to go ahead and add a new one, which opens up that form to record that activity for today. And we have the same things going on this form. We've got some required fields. The comments don't have that star, they're not required. And we have some menus to choose from. So I'm going to go ahead and tap that field and activity. Let's say we're just monitoring again. The agency, same thing, we have an option here. I'm going to say state cooperator. Surveyor, that's me, first and last name. I'm going to skip the date for now, and sample is an interesting one. So if I say no, then we're done with the form. If I say yes, I get a couple of other questions here. I'm going to put in a number of bombus, a number of helicoverpa. Yep, I said that. And then a field sample ID, if that sample ID is something we can enter here. So if you say yes, a sample was taken, then you'll have some more questions that you want to be careful to enter, of course, as well. I'm going to say no here and not enter anything there. And I know that many of you are probably like, Jenny, you missed the date. I'm going to leave that for now, and I'm going to pretend that I feel good about this form and hit submit. And you can see the field maps is like, hang on a second, you missed a required field. They call it an attribute, but they're talking about a field. And you can go ahead and ask it. If it's a long form, you could say view, and it would pull that up into view. And you've got a little red indicator here that we've missed the date. So I'm going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. Sometimes I just hit today to be sure, and I'll close that up. Check that form over. You know what? I like to put test in the comments when it's not real and submit. So in the case that you were doing that relocate workflow, that would have been a similar thing where maybe I want to relocate this one. I would have first to select that trap site, the original site. I would want to enter a trap activity of remove or remove missing. Either one of these will indicate that. And then I would want to go ahead and move about by placing that new trap location. And overnight, this activity or this remove activity would initiate kind of this symbol changing, and the status of that trap would change to inactive. So you'd see that overnight. And that's what this one did here. So let's look at this one. I'll cancel this form. If I open and close, 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 if I open this one, what I should see when I open that activity table is the last performed activity, which was remove. Now I just did this to test it, and so I don't have that, but you would see that listed right here. You would see remove as the final activity, and that would then make sense. Okay, there it is, it's inactive. Okay. Let's see, did I cover everything? Any questions about that trapping, those trapping activities, or anything you'd like to see again? Any questions at this point on trapping? You guys are such good students. I know you got it. Okay, then I'd like to point out one thing. What I'd like to do is I'd like to open up these layers, and when you have this pre-treatment scouting layer enabled, the view options that you have here in Field Maps are enabled, and you can go ahead and select a previous area, and you'll get a calculated acreage at the top here. Field Maps tries to do it too, but you can see this little area 4.9, they're rounding up. This calculated acreage is the actual expression being calculated there. So that 4.87 is the accurate to that point. And you can view everything that's been entered there as well. So that's a way to do that. Another thing that you have here is a pass-through to QuickCapture. So if you're going to be recording a treatment area, you can go ahead and tap this link and it will pass you through to QuickCapture and open that. What I want to do is open up the Chicago view so that I can show you those reference layers. So here's my downloaded map for Chicago, and I'm going to open that up. And you can see it opens up on the Chicago area. I have the same things along the top here. I have a sync button and I have my layers, and it does open in the same way in the defaults to opening the current active trap sites for this year. I'm going to enable the reference layers and just show you a couple of them. So if I enable core trapping areas, there they are under there. And you can scroll in and see what they are. Again, you can tap these guys and get more information if it's available. I'll turn that off. The other one, we were looking for Rusty Patch Bumblebee risk zones. Remember, there's a question there. We could go ahead and enable that. If I zoom in a little bit, an example would be right in here. We've got yellow and red. So if we were entering data on this trap site, this is yellow, right? So if I open that up and I want this site name, this trap, then I would want to see under Rusty Patch Bumblebee Zone, I would want to see yellow there. And you can see that we don't have that. This was a test site early on, but this should then say yellow. And in a similar way, this one here falling into the red, if we open that trap site, that Rusty Patch Bumblebee Zone should say red. So that's how you want to use your reference layers to inform yourself there. And maybe other ways as well, but that's just an example to kind of show you. While I've got things up, I want to show you what that looks like on my iPhone. So let's see here. I'm going to scroll out a bit. I'm going to turn off that layer. And I'm just going to leave it at that view. And I'll give you the phone view as well, right on top. So my iPhone, I'm signed into the production portal, that production instance. And my iPad, if you remember, is our training or our staging instance. So I should see a difference in the map, right? So I'm going to open Field Maps, same thing. It's going to try to pull me in. If I was in any question at all, I'll go back here to that main maps page. If I was out collecting data and I wanted to be sure that I was not in that training or stage map, you probably already noticed all the titles. There's no training here, but if I was concerned, I could again go to my profile, sign right out and sign in and make sure I was in the right one. Another thing that I'd be looking for, let's find OWB. I'm just going to go ahead and search for it because I have so many things shared with me that sometimes it can be hard. Oops. OWB. So I'm looking for 2023. Here we go. And I'm going to open that up. And I don't have an offline map ready. So you should also see the difference here along the top. I don't see that sync button like I do here. And I do want to see that sync button, even though I'm in my iPhone. But as it's loading, you can see it takes a little more time to load. That's because it's live. It's not an offline map that I just have sitting ready to go. So this will take me some time to get loaded and ready to go. Whereas this offline map is just sitting there ready for you. But I'll see the same thing. I'll see the same layers here available to me. And you can see how it kind of shares the screen. So we've got the layers at the bottom. I can pull this up and take up the full screen. I can pull it all the way down and leave it down there as it's loading. I can exit out of that. I have also the same option here for a legend that will tell me whatever is active, whatever layer is enabled, I can see the legend for. And if I go ahead and hit a plus button, it's going to give me that same data form. I can again pull this up and down, make sure that I've got everything right there, or even zoom in and out on the map separately. So mostly the difference is just a shared screen that's kind of smaller that you have to manage. But hopefully you can also see the difference in the maps. So our training maps are this light gray, kind of boring, I guess, off off to the side. And then our production version, our official map, should be really pretty imagery where you're seeing the trees and maybe some labels of some things like here's my local grocery store, the agricultural field and everything. So that's the difference between both the iPad and iPhone and the two different instances. All right, QuickCapture. So moving into what that does then, unless there's any questions, and please do interrupt me if you feel like there's anything. All right, we went through trapping, we placed a trap. We talked through editing one and adding an activity to a trap site. And we also pointed out that pass through to QuickCapture. I want to dive in a little bit with QuickCapture. It looks like this on your device. That little icon gets you right into QuickCapture. QuickCapture is also designed for use while disconnected. It doesn't ask you to do much. It asks you to do a few things. It's really button centric. It's meant to be a button that you press while on the move. So it's meant to be a quick capture, believe it or not. And what you do is you download the project to your device, and then any data collected is automatically pushed back up once you return to a Wi-Fi connection. What happens in QuickCapture though is once those items are, or those areas are uploaded, they disappear from your map. And so that's why you have a view in Field Maps if you feel like you need it. There will also be an ability to edit these QuickCapture areas. Melanie Maroney on the call here in the HubGIS group creates a web editor or a web app editor version that select members of OWB can go in and make adjustments. So you have that view in Field Maps, and QuickCapture is where you do that. We don't have a lot of information yet personal to PPQ field ops on using QuickCapture. This is kind of a pilot use for us with OWB, and so we definitely want input. Feel free to let Alec know how that works. And there is a little introduction to QuickCapture that might be helpful. I'm just going to go ahead. It's like a 2.5-minute video. I'll put the link in the chat for you if you want to check that out. If this is something that you'll be using, you might want to just make sure you know how QuickCapture is meant to work. I'm going to go ahead and give you a little quick overview of how it works. I know not all of you will use QuickCapture, but so I'm just going to make it quick, quick capture for you. But I'll just show you how that works. So there is, you can either open QuickCapture directly, or I'll show you what that pass-through looks like. So if this pre-treatment scouting is enabled, actually I have to be where there is an area. So I'm going to go ahead and just tap a previously entered area, and I've got that link that I showed you here, tap to record a scouted treatment area. If I tap this, it's if I tap on that link, it's going to ask if I want to switch portals because I have both that staging and official portal there. I don't want to switch portals. I'm signed into the right one, so I'll say cancel. And you can see kind of the same thing. We also have two versions of the QuickCapture. I have a training version and the official version. So again, with QuickCapture, be sure you're signed in. You also have this ability to sign out. QuickCapture gives you a hint right here, though. It says USDA.MRP.STG. So I know I'm in the staging portal and I'm okay to use this. Also, again, we've got titling, training, training, training. So this is our QuickCapture project, which I downloaded previously to my device. So I should be able to use this connected or disconnected. So I'll open that up. And what it does is it asks you to enter the area name first. It's holding on to previous area names that I've used. So I could enter that name, and then it gives me a view kind of split screen where I've got a button here on the left. It's tracking GPS accuracy for me. It's telling me whether I have records on my device. It says they're all sent, and I have a map view to the right. And if I want to, I can kind of drag this and change the view for more map or less map. And what I would do, I can't do it here because I'm stagnant in my seat, but I could be in a vehicle, I could be on a bicycle, I could be walking, any kind of movement that I want. Once I'm at the start of the perimeter that I want to collect, I'll just hit this start button. This doubles as a stop button. So I would hit start, I would start walking around the area, and once I return to the beginning of my area, I will hit stop. Once you do that, it also asks you for any notes that you have to take. It's an optional field, so it'll give you a little box once you've completed collecting that area and let you add some comments there and then submit it. So if you're connected to Wi-Fi, which I am in my basement, that just gets sent automatically up as soon as you completed that question. Or if you're disconnected, this little message here will say how many records are on your device. It will tell you how many areas. So that's just a quick view of what it looks like from that side of things. All right, so QuickCapture. Again, if you're using this QuickCapture to gather information on pre-treatment areas or scouting those areas, make sure that you're checking in with your supervisor and you're doing that the way that they want that done. I don't think all of you will, but that's a quick little look at what that looks like. A couple of reminders here, and again, I'm always hopeful that we've already covered these. I hope I did. You want to make sure that you're in the right portal, that URL that you type in to sign in, and this counts for both ArcGIS Field Maps and QuickCapture. We have duplicates. We have an official and we have the training version, so just be careful there. Make sure you're using a disconnected or planning for being disconnected out in the field when you collect data. And in addition, make sure that you're performing that data sync. Don't hold data on your device any longer than you have to. If you can get back to a good Wi-Fi connection, go ahead and sync that data. Same thing for QuickCapture. It kind of does that automatically. You don't have to prompt the sync, but just be sure that you are returning to Wi-Fi and make sure that those collections are, syncing back up. Being careful with data collection. I hope this doesn't offend anyone. I think it's more personal than anything. I can't tell you how many times I've given the form just one more look and found that I've, even spelled my own name wrong. So just take another moment, finish the form, take one more moment, just review it before you hit submit. Just make sure that you're being consistent and doing things according to the protocol that you have. That submit button fail we saw happen. It will kind of prompt you through things, but it happens if you've missed a required field. It could also happen if you're not meeting GPS requirements. I think you probably saw, even in my basement, I was able to do that and seemed okay and it went through. But if you have it fail, follow the path. It'll prompt you for what you need to do next, and you should be okay. That disconnected workflow for QuickCapture really follows the same pattern that we saw before. The only thing that I changed is downloading a project rather than downloading a map. And that happens one time and then it's there for you to use. So that's super easy too. And you have to do this regardless of whether you're connected or not. So I don't know how much this really changes things for you, but instead of a sync, just make sure you're checking that the data is being uploaded. So that's just one more little reminder there. Those two little things. And that's a QuickCapture path. Getting help, this is always important because we think we talked through everything, but there's always something that could come up. And so what you want to remember, anything related to the PEST program itself, Alec is your person to contact. Alec Ormsby is your National Operations Manager. Questions about how to enter data properly according to survey protocol, anything like that, that's an Alec question. Device issues, that's a CECIT thing. They support our devices. And access to these maps or the QuickCapture app project, having the right map access, having the right role so that you can enter data properly. You want to start with your supervisor. So that's why I've got in this order. Start with your supervisor. Your supervisor has to give approvals for these things and might have resources that you need. They might go to the local field GIS specialist. They may also email this webgis.connect. This is answered by a group of folks. So sometimes we get these things that are just, we don't have an easy answer for, and these are resources for getting those answers. Anything training related, that's my group, and we try really hard to make it so that you can just go to this mobile data collection tools webpage and find things. I would love to know if you go there and you don't find what you need, please tell me, and I would love to make sure that that is the spot for you. And that being said, what I'm going to do is put those links in the chat one more time for you so that they're handy. Both that mobile data collection tools webpage and the quiz. So there you go, one more time, just in case, which it makes it a good time to just remind you to test yourself a little, talk to each other about what you learned in this training, about how these apps work, about how your device works, but also use this quiz to kind of test yourself and make sure that you have that all really straight in your head now. So just a little reminder there. And that's really all I have to say, but I like to leave things open for questions. Honestly, anything that we covered today, the trapping app, placing a trap, activities on those traps, and even the QuickCapture app, are there any questions or is there anything that you'd like to see more of? Or finally, Alec or Melanie or Vlad or anyone here, is there anything I missed that you would like covered?
Not for me, Jenny. This is Alec. I just want to say thanks so much for a super polished presentation and for getting this tool ready to roll for our delimitation survey in
Oh,
Chicago
you're welcome.
2023. Super helpful. And again, I'll shut my mouth now and open the floor for questions. Yeah. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Alec, and thank you for being here. It's really great to. I love to see a familiar face. Makes me feel good. Super polished. I don't know if I'd say that. I do my best, but thank you very much. Anything anybody is worried about or would like to see one more time? I'm perfectly happy to do that. Awesome. Okay, well, what I'll do is I'm going to back up just a couple slides to that getting help page. Anyone is welcome to reach out to me or my team at any time. We really wish you success. We want you to feel comfortable, confident, and just be great little data stewards out there for the data that you collect. And so thank you for being here and listening to me and participating like you have, and good luck out there. I'll leave it at that and let you have your day. Thank you so much for being here.